Thanks everyone for joining us today for this webinar, How Trupanion Learned the Truth About Their Company Using BI. My name is Michal Wachstock. I'm Director of Online Marketing here at SiSense, and I'm thrilled to see so many people joining us for this really interesting and compelling case study. I'm thrilled to have TJ Houk as our guest speaker today to talk about how Trupanion brought a level of truth into their organization that was in desperate demand. Trupanion is a company near and dear to my heart, actually. Maybe to some of you here on the webinar as well. Trupanion is a pet insurance company that is helping keep our beloved pets happy and healthy. But with any successful business, Trupanion was faced with the challenges and success brings, and that is data, and lots of data. I think a lot of you can identify with those challenges Trupanion was facing, and we'll go over those, and also hopefully identify with the ways that they chose to solve those issues. TJ joined Trupanion in 2009 after working in financial planning and analysis at American West Bank. After working in several roles at Trupanion, he created the BI department, which supports the rest of the organization with data and analysis. TJ has a degree in finance and accounting and is also an actuary. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. A few people have already asked. The presentation will be recorded and will be sent to everyone who's on the call, and will also be available for distribution on our website afterwards. Please send any questions through the chat box or the question box that you see on your desktops. I'll be collecting the questions and I'll pass them over to TJ during our Q&A session at the end. If we don't get to some of the questions, I'll be sure to get those answered by email, so feel free to send over any questions. Actually, I wanted to ask just if everyone can hear me okay. If you hear me all right, please raise your hand. There's a raise your hand button, and if not, you can chat me something. Okay, it looks like everyone is hearing me just fine. Super. I'm going to be asking some polling questions to see how our audience fares in the BI space. I'm going to launch one of those right now. Going to launch that. Take a few seconds to answer it, and then we'll get started. Looks like the big winner is, so far, is need to be more analytic-driven organization, with slow or untimely access coming in second. About half of you have voted. If the rest of you could respond, that would be great. Yeah, definitely need to be more analytic-driven is in the lead, with slow to untimely access to information second, and constantly changing business needs as the third. So it looks like everyone responded, so I'm going to give that a close. And with that, I'm going to pass presentation rights over to TJ and have him take it away. Thank you so much, TJ.
Cool. Everybody hear me okay? So I guess I'll just go ahead and get started. I'm TJ Houk, Business Intelligence Director at Trupanion, and start with a little bit just about the pet insurance industry. And so the pet insurance got started in the early 80s in the United States. The way the model generally works is that if a pet gets sick or injured, a client can get reimbursement from the insurance company, and that can be for procedures that can be in the thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. And so there's a lot of potential need out there, but in spite of that, there's really only about 1% of all pets insured in the United States and Canada, and can compare that to various countries in Europe. And one of our main comparison points is the UK, which started having pet insurance about the same time, but they're about 25% of pets are insured rather than 1%. So there's a few main differences between the two markets, and so Trupanion got started in 1999 and entered the U.S. in 2008. Took on venture funding there to start moving forward. And what Trupanion really focused on was having a veterinarian-focused product, something that veterinarians would want to support and want to recommend. And that's sort of the way that the UK model worked. And so with Trupanion, we have 90% payout of all coverable conditions. We have no limits on those payouts. Paid out 70% of premiums in claims, which is higher than all the other companies in the industry. And I also mentioned that the way the models traditionally worked is that people seek reimbursement from their veterinarians, and Trupanion's really pushing forward to provide the service of paying veterinarians directly so that people don't have to cover the whole invoice and then wait to get reimbursed by the company. Obviously in this space there's a lot of need for data and analytics, and so we have a BI team. There we go. So the BI team, I got started when the company was only about 15 people. So there was one of me, and then we've built out that department and added several people in the last 8 months to really build out the team. And our backgrounds are in accounting, in actuarial science, in finance, economics, math, but really no one who has a computer science or database administration background. And so that's something that's been really important early on. I had a background in doing reporting and analytics, but I was used to having really clean, nice data sets coming from the banking world. And then I came here to this kind of a startup, and there was not so much clean, pretty data for me. And so we had to sort of hack things together and spend a lot of time digging through transactional SQL logs and trying to pull out what we needed. And so one of the things that we've done for this BI department that's unique is that we're really analytical support for the rest of the company. And so most of the data, most of the reporting, most of the analytics all comes through this team. And then the other departments will rely on what we provide. And one of the things that's powerful about that is it's an objective department. So I would imagine some of the people on the call are in that type of situation where you have different departments. I might have different marketing departments that are all taking credit for the same sales, or marketing and accounting arguing over which numbers are real, things like that. And so having an objective department is really valuable to helping make sure that people have consistent information. And so over time, as we built that up, kind of earned the nickname of the truth department. And so when people are going through different information, the information really has to come through this truth department and get bought off on. And the trick of that is that we need to be nimble, we need to be able to provide information quickly, and we need to provide it accurately and make sure the quality of that information is good, because if you lose that speed or you lose that credibility and accuracy, then people start going on and off and trying to do their own information, and you end up with contradictory or confusing information that's floating around the company. And so to maintain that objective truth department, really though, it's necessary to maintain a strong hold on your data to make sure that that you're putting out consistent information. So the way we were sort of looking at it, like I said, when I started in 2009, only about 15 people, a pretty limited company. One analyst did a pretty good job of being able to support all of these different functions. But as time goes on, the company is growing at a really fast clip, and still is. And so we start to have more and more departments where we're trying to support the customer service, we're trying to support claims. In 2010, we started adding a lot more analytical people in the marketing space and in the pricing and actuarial space. So they were way more hungry for data than people in the past. In 2011, we spent a whole lot of time raising a C round of capital, so that was on top of all this reporting we were doing. We did add one analyst at the time, but I mean the requirements just keep coming. And by 2012, most of those original departments that I had been supporting had now split into 4 or 5 departments, because what had been one department, now they have different functions within that department that all have different leads, they all have different needs, they all have different levels of sophistication when it comes to data. And then by 2013, we just keep going, and so we're just completely unscalable when it comes to that, because there's so many different audiences, and just adding people, just trying to add more resources doesn't necessarily do it. What we need to do is get smarter about it, because the way the workflow generally looked for us was we'd get a request, and then we'd have to go back and clarify the request, and then maybe we'd have to go back and tell the requester what he or she really wants. Then we'd have to go in and write our own custom SQL from pretty raw transactional information, dump that into Excel, format it up, charts and tables, and then finally send it off, and usually iterate on that a couple of times. And so
TJ, can I interrupt
really not
you?
a great process. And so
can I interrupt you for 1 sec? I'm getting some people saying that they can't hear they can't hear. I don't know if they'd be able to hear me then in that case. But I was just going to say, if anyone can't hear, well, that wouldn't make much sense, would it? Then they wouldn't be able to raise their hand. Okay, I'm just gonna send a chat message instead. I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah, some people can hear.
Yeah,
I feel like there's people who have telephone and people who have mic might be having different experiences. But okay, we'll have it recorded for those who can't hear. Okay, go on. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. So we showed this as a sort of an illustrative thing, where we were looking at our departments, where we have several different departments, we have several different people within each of that who are all looking for information, and as each of these elements of providing data increases, it all compounds on itself. And so, as we were saying, it's really unscalable. And so part of the problem is there's a lot of repeat work where they wanted it 1 month and now they need it again the next month, and we're going back in and rerunning information. And then obviously the level of iteration that comes with going back and tweaking your SQL again and shooting it out again. And so it just gets out of control really quickly. And so this is sort of what it looked like before. This is an illustration of actually just sales over a short period of time, where you can see sort of the length of code that we had to just try to get really simple metrics, dump it into a big messy data table in Excel, and then try to spin it up into quick graphs. And post SiSense, we have those things predefined so that when people have questions, we're able to just throw those together. So over on the side, you're looking at daily sales against a daily budget, and that's just much quicker for us to work through. And so one of the key elements of this is that we're really working for different levels of information and different key audiences. And so when I was speaking before about all those different departments, not only do you have different departments, but you also have different people who want to consume the information at different levels. So sometimes we want more rolled up summary information for executives, though in our case, most of our executives want every bit of detail that they can find. And then obviously we want information that's available to regional and departmental managers who are able to use that information to make quick decisions on their operations. So they need a lot more detail as far as what's going on by person individually. And then the last key audience is I wrote TVs here, but it's really everyone. And so what we value at Trupanion is data transparency, among other things, but one of our values is data transparency. We want people around the company to understand what the company is striving for and be thinking about how their job impacts that. So we have TVs with our company key metrics posted around the company, and I'll show some examples of that later on. As far as the process for starting with SiSense, we went through a pretty quick buying process that I'll talk about later. And then once we launched, it was a really quick process. So initially just needed to get SiSense on a computer and that, or on a server and onto our own computers for designing, which was a really quick process. Did that in the morning, and in our case, as I mentioned, we were churning out a lot of either regular reports and doing this manually. We were sending out different sort of recurring information, and so what we were able to do right away, we already had our data sources pretty well defined. We had our users and our needs pretty well defined. And so first step was just to automate what we were already doing. And day one, we were able to create the cubes inside of SiSense, use the definitions that we already had, spin up things, and have drafts of dashboards available to most of our audiences on day one. It was really helpful to us that we'd been living in that data for so long that we knew right what our cubes needed to look like, and really it was solving a need that we had. We already had the vision, so it was just about going in and executing. Most of our data comes from SQL queries, and so we have a couple of key databases that we're able to easily just sync up, combine information inside of SiSense and spin up. And then we have people always ask me about the data volume. So most of our information is in the range of millions of rows that we're using to be able to put together this information. After getting that stuff launched, we had a lot of lessons along the line as far as getting it rolled out to the rest of the company. We were really anxious to get SiSense rolling, and there was a lot of need, and I, having not done something like this before, was a little nervous.
Hello, I just lost the line. Anyone else lose the line? Raise your hand. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go try and find TJ. Hold on one second, everyone. Yes, hold on one second.
Hello?
Yeah, TJ, you back? Yeah, okay, great, you're back.
I'm back, yeah. Everything went red in my GoToMeeting. Sorry, everyone.
Okay, fabulous.
All right, so hopefully we're cool. I'll just jump in and interrupt me again if we lose it. I think I was talking about the introduction process. So one of the key things, it's really tempting to just start churning through and sending out a lot of stuff. Like I say, we were able to do things first day. Trying to do everything the first day is a mistake that's easy to make. So try to go steadily. You don't want to have to redo everything, and so spend a lot of time with your users, showing what the software can do, and we were guilty a lot of the time about just shipping a visualization, which was technically exactly what they asked for, but we really didn't make them aware of the full functionality. And there's a lot of filtering and pivots and different ways to segment and really look into and analyze your data that users weren't picking up on without being shown where it's at. One thing we learned is it's really helpful to really make the departments ask for it. Occasionally there's some managers who aren't as anxious, but in our case we have a lot of people who are really hungry for data, and so we had a challenge of prioritization, and so having the departments push forward what they needed was really helpful to us, and it really helped our experience with management when we were talking about ROI of this process, is showing how often that we're getting asked for all this information and the fact that we're able to return it really quickly. And then, I mean, this is pretty common advice, but be prepared for change. Preparation is essential, but it's more important to be nimble. The more you roll out, the more people are going to come up with new questions and new uses for what they have. And so the most important lesson for us was what I was calling thoughtful iteration. So you ship drafts, you follow up, you make tweaks, and continue to follow up, because otherwise your work occasionally ends up just sitting on a shelf somewhere. And also, as I mentioned before, part of the process for us was constantly learning new best practices. And so you don't want to end up a year out and looking at something that you made a long time ago and saying, did I really make that? So that's something that's really key, is to just continue to iterate and improve all of your work.
I'm going to jump in and launch
So
the
I promised a few examples.
Sorry,
this is a shot of our.
I wanted to jump in and offer the second
Yes.
polling. So I'm going to do that now before you show your examples. So if everyone could take a second to answer what features in BI are attractive to you and your users. So easy access to data, customizable and reusable. Although easy access to data is looking like the leader there. We got most people responding. Yeah, so we got easy access to data, customizable and reusable, faster time to value being the leaders here. I'm going to give that another few seconds. Great, and we're going to have the last poll right before the Q&A, so get ready for that. Thanks.
Cool. And I don't have the poll in front of me, but easy access to data would have been my answer too. I mentioned that workflow before about how we were getting bombarded with requests and it just wasn't a scalable process, and was pretty miserable for us trying to go through and manually do all this work. But obviously that was pretty miserable for the people on the other side of that process too. They want to have the information in front of them, and so that's really important. So this is a shot of our call center, and you can see a couple of these TVs up there, and they're a little zoomed out, but you can get the sense of what's going on there. So especially over on the left, you see just a bunch of reds and yellows and greens all over the place, and that was we have a bunch of our call center operators there with key metrics, and so they're able to keep up on, I think, about 10 metrics constantly, and these files update every couple of minutes, and so they can constantly be seeing how what they're doing is influencing both their own performance and the overall company performance. And so one of the things that really was powerful to me was seeing how addictive this stuff got, where you have these people that as soon as they closed an enrollment, or they had a big call with a customer, that they immediately look up to the board and watch them turn up. So we have a lot of different metrics and have quick conditional formatting so that people can get a quick sense of where they stand. One of the things that we did is highlight top individual performers for the day and the previous days, which introduced a little friendly competition between our different employees. This next example is our claims operations, and you can see Cyrus down below, one of our about 90 dogs in the office, checking everything out. But this is a key department for us, because customer service for us depends mostly on processing claims quickly, getting payments out the door, and doing it efficiently to serve our customers. And so this really helps shine a focus on it. So this TV also has top performers of the day. It has the number of claims outstanding, service level, so some of our key operational metrics there. And it also has keeps track of the number of pets helped that day, the total amount we've paid out. Our company, and especially the people in this department, it's not like what people mostly think of as a claims adjuster. Our folks are really there to help pets, and so it really helps us keep in mind what we're really here to do. And so that's been something that's been really helpful to keep a focus on that type of information. So one use that people tend to neglect of a tool like this is in innovation. So we tend to focus on more of the operational metrics and keeping that data really, really handy. But in a company that's moving as fast as ours, we're constantly trying new initiatives and projects. And in the past, and I'm sure many in the audience have experienced something like this, we'd start a project and have a sense of what we wanted to accomplish, but then after that we neglect to run regular reports because we're chasing the next new thing, or they're too much of a hassle, and then we'd forget to run them at all, and then 3 months later we'd be arguing over back what was our goal originally, what was the definition of that goal. And with SiSense, when we launch an initiative, We set up dashboards at the beginning of the project. We define the goals right there. We have daily updates, and in some cases they're, again, displayed on TVs around the office. So when we reach deadlines, the goals are unambiguous as to whether or not we hit them. So on this one, we have 4 main goals. We highlight reds, yellows, greens as far as whether or not we're on pace. This one has more detail as far as the individual detail behind those goals and where we might be falling down if something is red or yellow. And so that really helps us be able to have a clear definition of whether or not we're on track for our goals. Through this together, in preparation for this presentation, I did a quick scan of my email for some of the responses I've gotten in response to some of the things I've published. I particularly like the person who spends a lot of time on the road, and in the past, somebody on the road really didn't get a lot of information, because with so many different people clamoring for more data, the people who aren't able to just swing by my desk and make me drop everything and send something, those are the people that sometimes get neglected. So in this case, we were able to provide a lot more information, and he let me know that it's like a morning cup of coffee for him. So that was pretty key. Lastly, I want to do a quick overview of the buying process. The most important thing for us was speed. The company is moving fast. I needed a platform. And didn't want something that would require months of setting up data connections and teams of consultants to get that done, and we really needed something that we'd be able to just pick up out of the box, dump it on our data sources, have it really be a light footprint on what we're doing, and be able to move forward. And like I said earlier, SiSense was up and running in a day. It required little support from other people in the company, specifically IT. I, as somebody with no database administration or customer or computer science background, I've been able to manage it with minimal support, so that's been really, really key for us. We needed it to be scalable to many users. As I mentioned, we're committed to transparency, so we want as many people as possible to access this data. And that scalability requires that we're able to establish data definitions that will be consistent across users. And so what SiSense was perfect for is setting up the raw data in the right way, so that when we spin up a slightly different visualization or something for a different person, we're using consistent data across all of these things. Because, as I mentioned before, especially being sort of the objective truth authority for the company requires that we have consistency in the information we're providing. And so that's something that was really, really essential, and it helped us that SiSense has such a powerful back end that we can really define those things clearly, so that especially when I started moving my team from 1 or 2 people up to 5, we're all using the same data sources rather than hoping that everybody writes their SQL code the same way. So that was really key for us. And that's it. So I think we're doing a poll now.
Yeah, I'm going to launch the last poll and then open to Q&A. If people have questions, some people have already started sending. I will go through those and pass them over to you, TJ.
Cool.
So what are the biggest barriers to implementing BI? It's basically about data quality. That seems to be the biggest pain everyone is suffering. And after that, management backing. Yeah. Although lack of data quality seems to definitely be the front runner on that one. So while that's running in the background, I can already send over one of the questions. One of the questions was about the access for mobile users. Is the data available to mobile users different than what's available to your desktop users?
It's effectively the same. We have quite a few people that are outside the building, and they're using the information from mobile devices on occasion. I think most people are using it from the desktop. Just from a design standpoint, we focused on desktop, and so the data is all there, but I think it's optimized for people who are using it on desktop, and that's where most of our users are.
Okay, great. Few people have asked, what other tools and vendors did you consider when looking at SiSense?
Sure. Yeah, that's I usually mention that when I'm talking buying process. This was a pretty new space for me. Like I say, I don't come in with a lot of experience in this space, so I looked at everything. I tried to get every demo I could get my hands on, talked to a lot of different companies, and the big filter criterion was this notion of how quick is it going to be to spin up and get it put together. And so that filtered out a lot of companies that, as soon as we started talking about, just working through a long process, that just was a deal breaker for us. So there was a few. We looked at Logi. We looked at our team actually, for some things uses Tableau. So my team has that for occasional uses. But for the enterprise-wide thing, SiSense blew most companies away, both primarily because of the quick to deploy and also the cost of scaling up to a lot of different users. Those were the main focuses for us.
Okay, great. Next question. What size of data are you processing through SiSense, and how many data sources are you connecting to?
So one thing that is fortunate about us is that a lot of our information is stored in one of a couple of key databases. So we don't have a lot of different data sources that are all coming in. And I think only the maximum in any one, let's call it cube, basically. So a combination. We might combine three data sources in one place. And as far as volume, the best I can really speak to that is that we're in the couple of millions of rows as far as the biggest chunk that we're processing through. So it's not quite as monster as some of the other folks that I've talked to.
Okay. Is your data on the cloud or on local server PCs?
We actually made a move on that one, and to be honest, I'm not too technical in this space, but we actually moved data sources from an on-premise thing to an outsourced data center.
Okay.
So we've experienced both. Right now, it's offsite.
Okay. Someone asked about version 5 that was just released. I don't actually know. Did you get to beta test it? Have you played with it?
I did. So I was on the beta and played around with it. It's pretty thrilling, and one of the things that is interesting. So a lot of the keys that we talked about, as far as being quick to deploy and some of the keys around data definitions and things like that, those were really powerful, and those are essentially, I think they're basically staying the same, or maybe some tweaks. But from a visual standpoint, SiSense 5 is pretty exciting, and we're really looking forward to being able to roll that out. And it's also going to be something that, and I've actually shared with some people. We did sort of a dev environment where we were able to beta test SiSense 5, and so a lot of our a few of our users, we actually spun up stuff inside of that space and shared it with them, and they were pretty excited about the look and feel of it. So it's going to be good. It's going to be quite a bit better for right now. As I mentioned before, our team really owns the data. We create the definitions, and it's a lot of us feeding other people. And one of the big steps that is going to be a difference between 4 and 5 is that there's going to be more opportunity for the end users to work with on their own, while still, of course, having all of those definitions and things set by us. So we still maintain control, but people will be quite a bit more autonomous under SiSense 5.
So for those who aren't familiar with V5, it was just released in April. We're actually going to have a big marketing launch in May, but it is available for evaluation on the website. And your answer sort of led into another question, which was, can users make changes to the data? How much freedom do you give your users over the data?
So the data itself, we lock down pretty hard and make sure that our definitions and obviously just the quality is consistent with what we need. But as far as the visualizations, the different ways of looking at it, there's a lot of opportunities for people to pivot around and sort of roll up, roll down, things like that. And I mentioned that earlier when we were talking about taking the time with your users to explain what the capabilities are, because every now and then people will ask for something and we can just swing by and say, look, you just right click here and you have exactly what you're looking for. Especially one of the biggest and most important things for us is time and different levels of time. Everybody wants it differently, where they want to be able to see our overall trends on a monthly basis, but then drill into individual months to see what might be driving different behaviors. We have a lot of different drill downs and for different things that people are looking for. One example may be a person in the field who's performing well, and you want to see if that's really being driven by some other campaign. So their overall performance is one way, and then we drill down in different ways to see whether or not there's something else that's really driving performance. And so there's a lot of ability for users to do that now, but the capability of that's going to be much higher under 5.
Okay, someone asked about capturing call center data. Do you use that? Do you use SiSense for the call center data, and how?
We do. So there's some information that is that's still being used from our vendor, and we've been a case study for them also. Aspect is what we're using, and there's some case studies out there for that. But we're able to import a lot of that data into SiSense, and combine it with our back-end data. So that's the key for us, is that the vendor will be able to report on hold times and things like that. But what we're able to do is marry that information as far as how long people were holding or where they're calling from and things like that, marry that to the information that we have in the back end, so that we can see when people are calling up for certain reasons, are they later going to the website? We're actually able to combine our back-end web data and this call data to try to engage with the data as far as what customer behaviors are taking place, so that we can take a look at some of the other things that are happening. And of course, there's things like customer churn. So we're able to look at customer churn, and maybe we're able to see right before somebody cancels, were there interactions over the phone. So those are the types of things that we're able to take our back end transactional operational data and marry that up with our call center metrics.
Great, we have a few more. How do you objectively decide which metrics to monitor?
Oh, that's interesting, because there's a lot of clamoring for it, and in general we end up with with kind of doing everything. And what may be important to some may not be to others. The one place that I really step in, or my team will step in, is when somebody's looking for a particular metric that may actually be misleading or something like that. So it's really helpful once again, for people who really understand the data, who really understand the business, to be able to know whether or not a particular ratio or metric is meaningful. And outside of that, a lot of stuff gets monitored, but some more than others, and so it's just a little bit of a meritocracy. We spend a lot of time engaging with our users to figure out which things they're looking at, which things they're actually putting into action. So if somebody tells us over and over that they really like a dashboard or being informed about a certain thing, but they're not using that to manage their business, that'll take a back seat to the things where we're putting out the information, and we can go to them and hear that they drove this behavior. We might be sharing information and we see activity with one of our partners has fallen off, and that as long as that's shown in SiSense, that somebody from our team will give them a call and get them re-engaged. And so those are the types of behaviors that we're driving, and those are the type of metrics that we make sure get right up front is the things that really drive behavior.
That's great. I like to hear that. Next question. How close to real time are the dashboards updated compared to data input by an operator?
It's a couple of minutes. Maybe 2 to 5, I think, is approximately, maybe a little more than that, less than 10. And maybe 2 to 10 is about what we're doing. It's different intervals for different things, and there's possibilities we've discussed back and forth a little bit, trying to get to more real time, and I think it's feasible. So far, we haven't had a lot of need for it, so we've sort of left it where we left it at the beginning. But it's definitely enough that people are able to see their feedback, and if somebody makes a sale and they don't see it up there, I hear about it pretty quickly. So.
Another question, was there any difficulty translating the visuals on old dashboards into SiSense? Meaning, I guess,
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, were Excels or PowerPoints easier than what you could get out of SiSense?
So there's obviously it's sort of recreating what you're doing before, but in general the answer is no. Most of our information is pretty straightforward as far as being able to provide key charts, key metrics. One of the things that I usually mention is that when we're going through the buying process, what we were really looking for was to make the easy stuff easy. And so there were a lot of these things that we know just that could be optimized because we were going through and running things manually. And so these things that we were really focused on, it was no problem for us to be able to stick in there. And you kind of saw, I mean, a lot of it's just data tables. You heard the polling responses earlier that what most people want is just access to the data. And so specific visualizations and things like that, that's less important than just getting the information out there. And for us, I would say more often than not, the visuals ended up being better. It was generally a bit of a different look and feel, but some of you, I'm sure, have some of these Excel spreadsheets where you have a couple of different data sources and they're all in, and you're trying to get things that look good when they're, say, printed out or something. So you have all these graphs that don't necessarily line up. They're just off by a little bit, and they're trying to pull things from different sources. And in the case of this web interface, it's a lot simpler to be able to have all of your things line up and look good. You're able to show lots of different metrics in one place for people to consume, and so it actually improved more than causing a challenge in trying to get some of those metrics into one place.
And you're referring to the V4. V5 is so superior to that. I mean, that's one of the huge improvements in V5 is just the ability to make the visualizations look amazing. So if you think V4 looked good, just wait.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You were actually just offered, someone wants to take you out for lunch and pick your brain, so I'll let that happen offline, but there's been a lot of enthusiasm. I still have some more questions here, but we're going to address those offline. I'm going to send them to TJ and he'll respond directly. I really appreciate everyone attending. It's been really exciting, and thanks so much. And the email address, if you want to send directly to me, you can get me at webinar@SiSense, and I can forward to TJ as well. Thanks so much for attending, and come back for our next one. Thanks so much, TJ.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.